has been a key feature in the communist movement, especially the Maoist communist movement in India. So, so in response to the question that was raised, I remembered that this party document called the Party Program of the CPI Maoist. They actually quite in detail discussed this issue, and they found it very necessary to discuss this issue and formulate a way forward in terms of strategy of the revolution. So, so in answer to the question that raised, so I thought this was a really good document. So I'm going to summarize the summary I have presented to you, and here it goes. So feudalism in Indian society is caste-based on a Brahmanical ideology and continues to be rigid in its presence. The system was used to extract large surplus from the oppressed so-called outcast who were pushed to a slave-like conditions. The British colonialists, through East India Company, established their role with a ready-made system of oppression and exploitation. The Indian economy was converted into a completely dependent economy on imperialism to suit the needs of the British imperialist finance capital. To maintain the colonial rule, feudal forces were used to prop up landlords, creating permanent settlements in the form of zamindaris, mahalwaris, and rayatwaris system. This was a system of basically of how do the British collect taxes from the indigenous population. And so they had these props of landlords and so forth. Thus, the British rulers transformed independent feudal India into a colonial and a semi-feudal India. The Indian proletariat emerged from the ruined peasantry with the British setting up railways, lines, and mines, and docks, and plantations, and industries of that nature. From among the comprador merchants, moneylenders, feudal rulers, and landlords, except the British emerged, created a comprador big capitalist class, which is completely dependent on imperialism for its survival and growth. At the same time, an educated petty bourgeois class emerged to suit the needs of the British administration. The revolutionary sections of the petty bourgeoisie also took arms from time to time. Their struggles produced heroes like Bhagat Singh's and his revolutionary forces. The Congress Party under Gandhi, loyal to the British, representing the comprador big bourgeoisie and landlord class, intervened with the ideology of non-violence and thereby diverted the revolution path of the of surrendering and bargaining. To protect their political and economic interest, the British gave some political and economic concessions to the comprador big bourgeoisie, along with the landlords, so that they could act as a stable pillar of the British imperialism. The Russian October Revolution of 1917 gave rise to anti-imperialism and national liberation struggles all over the world. The British imperialists were forced to quit India, but not before establishing their faithful comprador agents. Imperialists transferred the power to their agents in the Congress Party and the Muslim League in partitioned India and Pakistan, respectively. The direct rule was replaced by semi-colonial and semi-feudal system under the neo-colonial form of indirect imperialist rule. So here, I think whether it is semi-colonial or neo-colonial, I think these are fairly interchangeable um, definitions. We can discuss that. Under neocolonialism, the finance capital through institutions like the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, the imperialists control the key sectors of the Indian economy and even the administration. Thousands of collaborations of technology and capital based on unequal agreements render India dependent on imperialism for aid, grants, loan, capital goods, technical know-how, agricultural inputs, and so forth. The stranglehold of imperialist finance capital over agriculture and other sectors have have been reinforced through the World Trade Organization driven policies of globalization. Whilst the capitalist forces were able to utilize the imperialist finance to exploit the productive force in the emerging industries, the feudal forces were able to use imperialist finance to reinforce the Brahmanical rule and the old structures of landed gentry, a serfdom and patriarchy and caste. So, so there was a sort of a collaboration between the imperialists who had vacated India, and their finance was being used by the feudal forces to maintain their form of existence. The CPI Maoist believes a correct and effective revolutionary strategy can only be adopted when the character of society is correctly understood. Hence, CPI Maoists categorize the Indian society as a semi-feudal and a semi-colonial society. This led them to identify the four major principal contradictions in the Indian society: the contradictions between imperialism and the Indian people, contradictions between feudalism and the broad masses of the people, contradiction between capital and labor, and contradiction amongst the ruling classes. So without categorizing, understanding the society in with these contradictions embedded in that society, CPI Maoist believes that you cannot form a strategy for a revolution to take place. So, in conclusion, really, a semi-colonial, semi-feudal society describes a nation that is not full colony, but is dominated by imperialist power, whose economy is characterized by the existence of capitalist and pre-capitalist, primarily feudal modes of production. Feudal landlordism, peasant exploitation being dominant in the backward agriculture sector. This combination of foreign domination and internal semi-feudal structures result in the political and the economic backwardness, stifled national development, and widespread poverty. Basically, that's it, really. Thank you.
Finished?
Yes.
Okay, let's start a discussion. If anybody do not want to be recorded, kindly let me know and I can pause. LSR send a clap. Okay. Now, if nobody is asking a question, let me ask a question. Why is this?
Logica put her hand up.
Okay, Lotika.
No, I didn't put my hand up. I was just clapping. I thought that was
Okay.
a good. I like the presentation.
Yeah. Okay. So, how is this this formulation of Indian nature of Indian state different from that of, let us say, CPI or CPIM or other formulations in the left like CPIML liberation?
I think that the fundamental difference is that CPI and CPM believe that India became independent when the British left, right? And so they cannot understand the concept of semi-colonialism. But what the Maoist people are saying, that it never became an independent country. It actually, the power got transferred from the British rulers to their stooges, which they left behind. So in the real sense of the word of independent, India never ever became independent. So it was a transfer of power rather than and this is where CPM and CPI differ from the Maoists, and this is why CPM and CPI will never use semi-colonialism.
Is Gaurav wants to speak? Gaurav, do you want to speak?
Yes,
You want to ask a question? Okay.
can you hear me?
Gaurav, please.
You're very quiet, Gaurav. I don't know why. Like very
Can you
low.
hear me?
That's better.
Yeah, is this better?
You can
Yeah,
come
it is.
closer to your laptop or computer.
Yeah, I'm trying actually. I don't know why. Um, I- no, I just wanted to. I was just agreeing with his point when he made the distinction between CPI, the parliamentary left, and the revolutionary left. I I wanted to thank Lake first for inviting me here and for this presentation. I wish you could speak for longer. I wish you had. But I wanted you to prod more on the one of the statements that you made, that there is a bit of a quibble about semi-semi or neo-neo, semi-colonial, semi-feudal, or neo-colonial, neo-feudal. In the context of various people saying that in that neoliberalism is dead and that we are back to techno kind of a feudalism, or like, it's almost like the world is coming a full circle in defining what our current mode of production is. So I just wanted you to focus a bit more on what are your views on this semi-semi versus neo-neo. Thank you. I hope that was clear.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Like I said, I think this word is actually used interchangeably, but semi-colonialism is actually referred to where territories were colonized previously, but the form of exploitation has now actually developed further, because during the privatization, globalization, and liberalization policies which came around, and Thatcher and Reagan era, they have started, in my understanding, is they've started creating special economic zones in these backward countries. So I think they tried to change the laws of the labor laws of India. That didn't have that was resisted against, and the Indian authorities knew that that would be resisted. So what they've decided to do is started to create special economic zones. And these special economic zones are enclaves, which are basically foreign territories in, in these countries, and where the local laws or the national laws do not apply. For example, the labor laws will not apply in these special economic zones areas. And these areas can be very vast areas, like the mining areas in the forests of India, or they could be creation of dam areas. So there, the labor laws are not applicable. The tax laws are not applicable. So this is the kind of I think this is what neocolonialism is, which is slightly different. But in my view, I'd say semi-colonial and neocolonialism are interchangeable. Somebody can tell me differently.
Yeah. Okay, Karthik, and then Lotika.
Yeah, I want to ask a bit of a devil's advocate question from what I've heard here and there. The semi categorization is from 40 years ago or 50 years ago. And now things have changed in the sense that Adani is buying coal mines in Australia and Africa, and Tata are exporting capital even to Britain, where they're buying up factories. They've even bought Tetley Tea, they've bought Jaguar Land Rover. So these former, what people that put forward this view would say is that these former comprador bourgeoisie are now exporting capital even to deindustrialized imperialist countries. So yeah, some people argue that calling India semi the same way that the Philippines is semi doesn't make sense now, because Filipino companies aren't exporting capital around the world. So I wondered if you had any response, or what the response is to that from Maoists in India or anyone else.
Sorry, I don't know the answer to that, because I don't confess to know the subject inside out. This is a discussion. I was hoping that you guys will have read
Yeah.
up as well.
I will. I can comment on that if you don't mind.
Okay, should I record it?
Yeah, no problem. So I'll start with the idea of independence that Lake kind of pointed out that, the Maoist line is that we haven't achieved independence. Actually, I think it's broader than that. In a lot of Adivasi and in other marginalized groups, this understanding is there that our independence is still to come. The reasons may not all be the same, but that is definitely a very broad population who will say that. The second point, I can answer or I can at least not answer, maybe give my view on my understanding on both what Gaurav said about techno-feudalism as one thing that is happening now as part of all this, and what Karthik was mentioning about capital coming here. And this is certainly something which we have also been discussing and addressing in our Bastar series of webinars that I do post some links in the Inspire to Chat thing. We are running a 12-part series on the state violence in Bastar, and what is this deadline of 31st March 2026 that the government has said that Maoism will end in India. By that date, they will have cleared it out. What does that mean? So in that, in our fourth webinar, actually, when we were conceptualizing it, this came up. The part about what Karthik said, that certainly India actually, with all its going down the liberalization, privatization, globalization route, has actually dried up its revenue sources. With so much privatization, it's actually selling off a lot of the public assets. So the revenue sources of the state are very much diminishing. And the state corporate nexus is literally again going down the route of primitive accumulation, which is what Karthik was saying, that in the mine, in these areas, there is I mean, they are really going in for mining in a very aggressive way. As they are, supposedly running a counterinsurgency program, they're also going, many mining auctions and things are happening. So I don't want to make it too long, but yes, what Karthik is saying, that it's actually going back to a mode of production of primitive accumulation. And that argument can be made from what we're saying regarding the techno-feudalism. So that is one way in which this is happening. Literally stealing the resources from all these land from India for the purpose of their own enrichment in these other countries. The one is, of course, state violence, and just as we see in Bastar, the militarization, and through the militarization, the repression of people, etc. But in Jharkhand area, and this is actually what we are going to cover in our webinar on 22nd. So sorry, I'm plugging that in as well. That they are going through what we call lawfare. And digitalization of land records has played a huge part in that, and that is what I'm calling techno-feudalism here, is that land records and land administration governance in India. Sorry, the governance is being reduced to a sort of state just being a broker and doing administrative tasks, so it's becoming a managerial sort of role only for corporates to sell land to them, to grab it from the Adivasis. And the way it's done with the digitalization is that the common lands, and when they are when they're put in the digital records, they actually be putting as wastelands. So I'm going to stop here because I don't want to talk too long. But this is, like I said, we'll be covering in our webinar on 22nd. And Gaurav, the booklet I shared with you covers all this in a lot of detail.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay, thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, yes.
Hello. Is this Surinder?
Yeah.
I'm just listening to the meeting from another meeting.
Okay.
But I didn't listen to the first half of Lake's presentation, so you might have already covered it. But all I wanted to ask was, Samir Amin had this theory about the dual mode of production. So, two modes of production can exist side by side, and particularly in India with colonization, and it's been subjected to imperialist exploitation and continues to be. There are sort of, both modes of production can exist side by side, maybe not in their pure nature, but, the colonization and exploitation that continues to be is an essential part of the capitalist world, without which it can't exist. So, you can't classify India as just feudal and just capital. It's both, isn't it? So was that covered? I'm sorry, I can't even stay, I can't even stay for the answer, but I just wanted to introduce that if it hasn't been.
Yes. Okay. Lake.
Yeah, on that, this is on that the imperialist capital is actually being used by the feudal forces to maintain their feudal ideas and feudal culture. For example, even in industries in India, you will get puja temples being created inside the factories. So this is to maintain the Hindu Tawa kind of superstructure, because imperialist capital has no real interest in changing the superstructure of the society. They actually collaborate with the feudal forces to maintain that society, and this is where the imperialist capital actually does not does not try to change the fabric of the society. So there is a collaboration between the two. and that they work off each other, and that's what I thought.
I thought
thanks.
this discussion of this, what is the nature of India's state, from the left cycles, I thought till 1960s, until the Naxalite revolution broke out, the left was generally of the view that India is not free. That was their original position. I think my 1960s they changed that India is free and it is we should work towards developing, completing the democratic revolution. And that is why I think Chari Majumdar in his 8 documents came out criticizing that position, and which became the theoretical foundation for the Naxalite movement. So now look at that is, I remember studying this mode of production debate. When I was doing my MA, there was a topic, mode of production, agricultural economics. There was a book called Mode of Production. Like he must have, what was her name? It was very important discussion, which can be found in the Economic and Journal, Economic and Political Weekly. Yeah, about this characterizing India as a semi-feudal, semi-colonial country. My view is that if you go to Indian cities, you find all the trappings of a modern capitalist country. There is a huge labor force there, working class there. It is not the
I think
peasants. It's not the peasants. The feudal characteristics is it is the peasants dominating, and
yeah.
feudal bit is existing very strongly. Elements of the feudal that is even agriculture after Green Revolution in India. In my opinion, the basic nature of agriculture has changed. If you look at the percentage of the people living on source of livelihood, it is something drastically fallen recently again. Something like 17%, 17 20% source of livelihood agriculture, if I'm not mistaken. And so I'll finish one more. And the religious feudal elements are found in the hold of religion and the caste. So there is an element there. As far as economic system is concerned, I think it is not very powerful. Because at that time, the idea was Mao strategy, India strategy. If it is a feudal country, that strategy could be applicable to India. Okay, like, sorry.
I think the argument is that when you say, a society develops from a feudal society into a capitalist society, that is a development, in the Marxian terms. But what what is happening in India, that although we have got the introduction of capitalist mode of production in pocket areas like the cities you mentioned, what it hasn't done is develop the society from its feudal aspects. Because what is happening, we have a reinforcement of caste system, we have a reinforcement of patriarchy, we have a reinforcement of the old traits of feudalism. So that's the problem, because in the pure Marxist or in the pure economic interpretation of what you're saying, you're right, but that's not happened. You even within the cities, casteism has not disappeared, the patriarchy system hasn't disappeared, and all these traits and the Hindu Tava hasn't disappeared. These are aspects of feudalism, and capitalist development in these areas has failed to make any change, and therefore the development is under question.
I just wanted to clarify my point earlier, and Ravi Kumar has made a similar question as well, about South-South investments from India, and whether they're neocolonial expansion or whether they're solidarity projects. I think especially I find it hard when, for example, it's Adani opening mines that are displacing indigenous people, not in India, but in Australia, or when Adani is owning a whole port in Israel. And it's not just Adani, like the example I gave of Tata exporting capital even to Britain. And yeah, so with those, I just wonder if these sort of Banya industrialists, if they're still comprador local bourgeoisie, because some people have started saying they're imperialists themselves because they're exporting capital.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Can I say something on that? Lek wants to say something?
No, no, carry on.
Yeah, my understanding about that is that export of capital. Say that when we discussed earlier neocolonialism, the interpretation is that earlier through colonialism, through direct colonialism, the imperialist powers came to our country, came to these colonies and extracted surplus value. Now, that was not possible, as Lake said. So after Second World War, maintaining the army, etc., is very costly. So a better way is creating those institutions, IMF, World Bank, and other institutions, now World Trade Organization, creating rule-based, and these rules are very favorable to the developed countries, from the former the imperialist countries. So through these roles, they were able to exploit. So FDI, foreign direct investment, and now later after 90s, financialization has been the major tools. And so they are able to extract. Now, when you look at this, the investment of, let us say, Tatas or Adanis, I try to understand whether are they taking away surplus from that country? Are these Adanis extracting surplus from Australia? Is Tata's extracting surplus from UK and taking them and benefiting Indians? Some Indians are there who are benefited, who are employed by the Tatas, who are remotely working, sitting there. And I doubt whether they are able to extract surplus from UK and take it to the benefit of Indian elite or India as a whole. Or are they helping British capital? British capital, they are no more the leaders. British capital to extract some Indian surplus from there to here through the exploitation of that those back officers who are working there. So that is my. I try to think it is not really. They are not a force there. They are not a force. They are helping it, the British capital to exploit India. Continue that. That is how I try to understand.
And the other point with that, Thomas, is that these Andanis and Tatas and things like that, they don't really play any role
Yes.
in the way the Britain is run. They don't say, you got to do this to your labor laws, you got to do that. They don't say, they cannot enforce that on the British. Whereas the American capital, the world capital, they will try and force the developing countries into telling them how they must govern their country. And I think that's a very key difference here. Tata investing in the steel industry in Wales is not the same thing, because he does not have that power to influence the British legislation. I think that's it.
Yes, Gaurav. Gaurav, yes.
Hi, I'm just trying to respond to the conversation and the messages.
Louder, please.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think
Yes,
you have to come a little closer to the.
I am as close as I can come to my mic, but I think
Ah,
it's the problem of the mic. It's not the best quality. I'll
okay.
I about Indian national the comprador bourgeoisie exporting capital. I think there are I mean it's something that that the party program of the CPI Maoist and many revolutionary parties does acknowledge it. So I think we must. It's not that they are not aware of it. They do acknowledge it, but I think the question here is: does the change in just the nature of the comprador bourgeoisie, just one small class of India, lead to us to revisit our understanding of the dominant mode of production in India as a whole? So that remains a question because it's only a change in the nature of the comprador bourgeoisie. Earlier, they were just conduit for the foreign capital to extract surplus from Indian working classes, and now they are also doing something. I mean, although I would agree to what Thomas said earlier, like their role and what Lake also said that they still play a very minor role. I mean, Adani is an interesting case for sure, and it's also a development of the last 5 7 years. So it's a developing phenomena. So for us to just change our understanding of the dominant mode of production in India because of this one factor of Adani is also something that we need to be more wary of. But also we need to keep in mind that this is a developing phenomena, and we can't be not addressing this in the way we understand things. Second, my point was about the understanding of India being such a diverse country, that can we have an understanding of a dominant mode of production in India as a whole, because Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh are remarkably different from, for instance, say Tamil Nadu or Western Maharashtra or say Punjab. So there is also an understanding of a regional mode of production in India. I think that that's also something, or what Surinder was earlier implying, that there could be a um, uh, at the same time that could be a dual mode of production or something of that sort. So there is also a discussion around that we could have. And the third and the last point, and I would try to be short here, is the next net extraction of surplus. Even when the comprador bourgeois does is showing features of a neo-colonial feature or an imperial feature, in the net terms India still the it's the Indian working classes that's there is a net surplus out of the country, so it still maintains that in the net sense, although in the gross sense things are definitely different from what they were, let's say 40 years ago, when the semi thesis, 50 years ago when the semi thesis was taken seriously in India. Yeah, I'll end it there. Thank you.
Lyotika?
No,
Raise your
I
hand.
was just agreeing. I was putting a thumbs up to say agreeing with
Okay.
Gaurav and who had spoken before Gaurav? Yeah, I was just, you had spoken also. Yeah, I was just agreeing. And the regional, what Gaurav was saying about the regional thing, I think that does make a lot of sense. Though I'd probably add to it just that broadly manufacturing is going down, though probably certainly the south is still very different from the north, as you said, Gaurav.
I mean, it is recognized amongst the Indian revolutionaries that India is such a diverse country and a very big country that there is going to be uneven development. Punjab, for example, they are saying the agriculture is no longer a feudal setup. It is a mechanized, it is a industrialized form of agriculture, very similar to what you might call in America. But when you go down to places in Bihar or deep down into places like Andhra Pradesh, there, there are still bullock carts, plowing. So there is a huge uh, pockets of areas where there is uneven development. So, and similarly, attitudes towards caste are very different all over the world, all over India. So it is, I don't think there is one label you can put to the whole of India, but the Maoist party seems to say that there is, as an overall a generalization of India, they believe that India is still a semi-feudal country because of the traits of feudalism that persist and are actually growing, in terms of religion fundamentalism, casteism, and patriotism, and so forth.
So what this means is actually, one question I want to ask Lake is, if you say that India is feudal, things are very strong, then you have mentioned also in your write-up that will decide what is the stage, what would be the strategy. And that is my criticism of Maoist strategy, that we can have a peasant revolution, and an uprising by the peasant revolution is how we will proceed. Is that a good strategy? Or we put our energy, that is left forces put the energy in conscientizing and developing the working class. There is a huge working class in India. It's not the peasants that is dominating. So if you have a strategy, if you have an overwhelming, overarching theorization that India is a semi-feudal country, you will be organizing, the Maoist strategy. You are hiding behind the forest. Okay, that type of struggle. And they are quite successful. They have been carrying on. But that is just that's an effort to just to hold on to your fort rather than advancing. You are just hold on to your fort, holding on to your fort.
Mm-hmm.
While other ML parties are also declining, we are not successful in organizing the working class. So that is the significance of this discussion and clinging it, whether India is a semi-feudal country or it is a neo-colony or it is a free country.
I think it goes back to the argument, which the CPI, CPM have always held, but the CPM Maoist seems to have woken up to the idea that look at the contradictions that exist in society. The CPI, CPM have always resisted the question, tackling the cost question. Their idea has always been, oh, once the revolution comes, the cost prejudices will disappear. But that is actually is proven out to be not true, because casteism is a serious impediment to establishment of the workers' revolution. So it becomes a very crucial contradictions in society, and caste being an aspect of feudalism, and that this is the recognition which is missing in the CPI and CPML, and Maoists are saying, look at the contradictions that exist in society. Let us tackle all of these contradictions, wherever they exist.
So what you are saying is actually the formulation that India is a semi-feudal country implies these two aspects, that culturally we are feudal, that there is no doubt about it. This development of capital and reinforced, and it is being continuously reinforced. by this capitalist development has reinforced this caste system and the feudalism, the cultural that way. But economic base, that's what I thought it's useful to make a distinction, that economic base, there is no more that peasants for us to go and organize. And we can go and organize, but that they are not sufficient to go and take over the Indian state. So that will be the working class. That is the, in my opinion, the contradiction of the Maoist party with other ML groups. So then what the Maoists are holding on to the fort, basically because the people in those areas, they have no option. It's my interpretation. They have no option because these capitalist forces want to get rid of them. Get rid of them. Like they want to get rid of in people of Gaza is fighting because they have no option. These hills full of minerals, they want to get rid of all these people and take those land and put those factories there. And you are given the interpretation that it's a primitive accumulation, going back to primitive accumulation. So what I mean is that theoretically speaking, they are holding the fort, but that strategy is not sufficient, in my opinion, to overthrow the state and capture the power, if that is your ultimate objective. So
I
it
just
necessarily has to be working class.
I just recall the that for revolution there are three ingredients that are a must: a party, an army, and a broad front. And the broad front is the key, I think.
Yeah.
And who are the constituents of the broad fronts? They are going to be people who are fighting casteism. They are going to be people who are fighting patriotism. There are going to be people fighting nationalism. So that's the key. So you cannot just boil it down to the industrial worker fighting the capitalist, because India is such a broad place. There are pockets, there are different struggles being carried out in different areas, and each one of them have a different character. And how do you get them together to formulate a revolutionary movement under the dictatorship of the proletariat?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. But what I meant is that strategy of the Mao is coming out of this ideology that India is a semi-colonial, semi-feudal, and Mao. The name itself indicates, Maoist itself indicates that we are at the stage when China was in 1949.
Could I respond to that again?
Yeah.
So about that, what some other comrades have mentioned from Turkey and from America and Britain is that to be Maoist means to look at your conditions and your society and then decide the appropriate strategy based on that. Being a Maoist doesn't mean that you have to be in a semi-colonial, semi-feudal society and then engaging in people's war. Like you don't have to be in the same conditions as Mao, is what some of these people would say. So they are interested, for example, in America, they talk about urban guerrilla warfare from the ghettos, so-called ghettos and things like that. So even if a country isn't semi-colonial, semi-feudal, a Maoist party can still exist there in theory. Just they wouldn't have the encirclement strategy and all these kind of things. If that does that make sense?
Yeah.
My understanding of Maoism is just look at the contradictions that exist around society and use all the contradiction for the furtherment of the revolution. That's I think my understanding of it. So even in Britain, there is no feudalism in Britain. But what are the contradictions in society? Let us look at the contradictions and how do we exploit these contradictions to further the revolution.
So that leads to the another question. We keep on adding these numbers: CPI, Communist Party, Marxist, and then CPI, CPIM, CPIML, and then we have this one more, Maoist. And how does that help? So this additional thing of Mao's contribution, to add that Maoist to them, or we should stop at just ML. So this strategy that, concrete, analyze the concrete situation concretely, that is already there.
I'm not a spokesman for the Maoist Party, by the way. I must.
Yeah, all of us are trying to
Paul wants to
debate
say.
and then, yeah. Yes, Paul or Philippa.
Hi. I just want to point out about the UK and feudalism. We all know, don't we, from the basic dialectical thinking, that the old is retained in the new. And that's also true of the UK. There are remnants of feudalism in the UK around land ownership. So most of the land of the UK is owned by a small number of people. That's a relic of feudalism. And if you go to Scotland, for example, you'll encounter it on a daily basis. So the argument that UK is feudal free is one of these kind of liberal myths. It's not true. Aristocracy is still very, very powerful and form part of the deep state. It's let's be careful about these broad statements.
Philippa wants to say something. Okay, then I think there is no more discussion. We can wind up. It will be 1 hour.
I just want to pick what Ravi has said.
Yeah.
India is investing in South Africa, in Africa, and all that. Is India an imperialist? And I would say yes. Even China is investing in various parts of the world through their Belt and Road initiatives. If the investment is an unequal investment, and if investment is actually to extract more from that place rather than give, then it becomes a neocolonialist venture. And we've seen that happen in Sri Lanka. Where they gave funds to build this port, and the Sri Lankan people were unable to return the payment. So in that case, and China now has 90-year presence. So that becomes an imperialistic project, and so there is. I don't have an objection with the Americans or the British investing in India. The problem is it an equal investment? Is it more of an exploitation of India, rather than a fair trade? That's the question, really. And normally these investments from the imperialist sources tend to be an exploitation, an uneven agreement. This talk about fair trade agreement is not actually fair. The Indians or whoever they are, the developing country, almost always succumb and to unfair agreements, where the Indian people don't get a fair deal. Some cronies in India will get raketed, but the people don't benefit from it.
I think so, because I think China, we should study China further. China, we could interpret China exploiting Africa and other countries. They are extracting for the benefit of their industry, but they are different from what I have seen. They are different from Western powers.
Yes, yeah.
So
Under under no the Indian Communist Party of Marxist are very clear. They have labeled China as a social imperialist country.
So therefore, in one way I try to understand this capital has the same logic, whether it is capital of the Americans or the Europeans or the UK capital or Chinese capital, they have the same logic.
Absolutely. I mean, India, when you talk India, look at Indian Bhutan, Indian Bangladesh, India is behaving like an imperialist.
Yeah, but they don't consider India to be an imperialist power. They consider India to be a bully.
Sorry?
Bully. Bangladesh, Nepal. The leftist forces there, they use the word bully. That's what I have seen. They don't consider India to be an exploited. They're trying to bully them rather than an imperialist power. So they don't have the mechanisms. They don't control the institutions to control. Because now exploitation happens through these institutions. India doesn't control any of these institutions. They're trying to operate within that.
Does India have any control over any regional institution?
Yeah, that's what
I don't know much about them, but I know there are a few like SAARC or something.
Yeah. Is there any regional institutions? We had one SARC, South Asian something, that is not functional now. It had no meeting for a long time. Now we have got BRICS. BRICS. Is India a power in the BRICS? I don't think so. It is not a very big power. But China is having some power there.
I wanted to ask a bit about, because it connects to this, about the earlier point about surplus extraction. Because if Chinese capital being in Africa is operating just as Western capital does, and if capital is capital, then again the same thing, if an Indian capitalist who is based in India has the headquarters and their personal living situation in India and their own Jaguar Land Rover, which is manufacturing in near Coventry and selling 4x4s to Israel, then how is that not extraction from Palestinians and even arguably even from British workers and from all the African workers that provide minerals for Jaguar Land Rover? How is that? How can we quantify whether that is or isn't going to India? If you know what I mean. Because it would be very simple if, for example, Tata was headquartered in the Cayman Islands and paying tax over there and having its staff over there. But if it's based in India and the company is known to exploit Africans further down the supply chain, how do we know? Where can we look to see? And the same goes for Adani having coal mines in the indigenous parts of Australia. How do we know and see the data for whether that surplus benefits Australia or whether it benefits Mumbai or Gujarat?
Yes. Lutika wants to say something.
Yeah. So when you talk of how what happens to the capital when you go to when it goes to India, it's not going to India. It's only going to the people themselves. These people, and because if you look at the tax system, I've just like I was saying, actually revenue sources for India is pretty much dried up. And a lot of these like Lake was talking about the special economic zones. So the coal that comes from Queensland, where it goes to Goda, the thermal plant in Goda in Jharkhand, where it's burnt, that plant is in a special economic zone. And what is the special economic zone? It's actually a country within a country, which means as Lake was saying, no national laws are applicable there. Tax wise, they are supposed to pay a certain amount of very little tax in the first year, and then it keeps dropping. And where does the electricity go from there? It's going to Bangladesh. They're actually selling the electricity to Bangladesh at also very exorbitant prices for Bangladesh. It's in Jharkhand. Jharkhand otherwise has a rule that 25% of electricity that is produced in a thermal power plant in Jharkhand must go to Jharkhand. It's not. It's not going. The people who are living in the area of the thermal plant have nothing from there except pollution. And it was their agricultural lands and things, that's all gone. There is, in fact, I have spoken to people from that area, and they were telling me that, it's become so hot in that area that the administration, which I was talking about, like the techno-feudal, the techno-managerial, the state, it has moved its offices quite far away from this there, but we are left here. We still have to live here in this heat, but they have moved their offices away and they are living at a distance from it. But the plant and the pollution and whatever, environmental laws and all should be followed is not happening. Everything is getting more and more relaxed, and it's being done in the name of national security and things like that. So it may be going to India, but it's only going to very limited pockets.
Shall we wind up the discussion? We can continue this discussion on the mode of production in India. I can invite a friend of mine from India who is in a party called CPI-ML, Red Star. And their position is India is a neo-colony. So if you want, we can invite him for our next session. Shall we invite?
Yes, please.
Okay, if he agrees to come. Another idea I have is that about the rise of these flags. I met there was a conference of socialist economics. I don't know whether you have heard about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they published Capital and Class. It is a socialist journal. For the first, there is a chapter in Midlands, West Midlands. They held a conference last week at the University of Birmingham.
Oh.
One-day conference for the first time.
Oh.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. I shared that invite in our, it is nearly 30 people, 35 people attended. Many people presented small papers. It is a socialist conference.
Oh.
It was very interesting.
Yeah.
I met one guy, he's a trade unionist. He's also a colleague. He's working there. He spoke about the rise of racism, rise of these flags and what we can do about it. I thought of inviting him. He had some good ideas. He is researching child poverty in UK. That is his area of study. He's in social policy.
Were there people from other countries?
Pardon?
Were there people from other countries?
No, he is from,
No, but were there any people from other countries there?
For this conference. No, they are from, I don't think there was anybody from other countries, but they were all in some universities in the UK.
Was David Bailey there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the organizer.
Yeah.
Who asked that question?
So they've come out, they're allowed, they dare raise their heads.
Yeah, he was the organizer.
Wow, interesting.
He's the chair of the. They started as a reading group here, and then it has become like conference first. Okay, then thank you very
Right,
much.
who's in India? Thanks very much.
Thank
Thanks.
you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Lek.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you, Lek.
I'll tell
Yeah,
Paul.
thank you.
I'll
Thank you
tell
very
Paul
much.
now. Yeah.
Please send the link of your YouTube channel in the group, please, Thomas.
Pardon?
Please send the link of your YouTube channel in the group. I didn't know you
Paul.
had that, so I would like to hear